The 2022 Subaru WRX, stirring up a lot of controversy, I see. Let's talk about it because I have done a review on the 2015 WRX STI Launch Edition. I will leave a link down in the description box to that review so you can see my thoughts on it, but I drove that vehicle and I absolutely loved it. And I loved it because it was an organic driving experience. That antiquated feeling is what made you connected to that car, and that's why you felt something when you drove it. The interior was a barren wasteland, and I don't care. See, the simplicity is what made that car great, and you know what? The resale value of those WRX vehicles were excellent because of that, because it was simple, because it was enjoyable to drive, because you actually felt like something when you drove it. It's not like a lot of these newer cars where you get in them and you're just there for the ride. You're actually a part of the driving experience with some of those older WRX products, even the previous generation that I drove. But this new one, and it's not just this new WRX, I'm not just picking on this, but all these new performance cars, I'm sure you kind of see the direction that they're going. Okay, they're a lot more neutered than they were before. Hell, the new Mustang now wears its name on a SUV that's fully electric. You know what I'm saying? But I'll talk more about that later. Let's just first of all, let's go through the changes made to this new WRX, and then I'll kind of sum everything up at the end here. So we have a new engine, a 2.4 liter boxer engine still. It's a 4-cylinder producing 271 horsepower and 258 pounds-feet of torque. That seems rather abysmal on paper anyway, especially since compared to the previous generation regular WRX, not the STI I drove. The regular one, it only makes like, what, 2 or 3 horsepower more than the previous car, but that's not a big deal because I think most people are just going to tune this thing. This is an excellent amount of horsepower for everyday straight driving, so I have no real issues with that, but I'm sure more people would want the extra power, and you can get it if you just tune it. The good thing is it's available with a 6-speed manual transmission, and they have made improvements to this 6-speed manual, but we also have a new automatic. And they're saying it's an 8-speed, but from my understanding, it's really actually a CVT. But you know what? I wouldn't actually put down that CVT quite yet, because in this modern age, especially with a lot of the economy cars I've driven, the CVT transmission has truly come a long way. It's actually one of my more preferred transmission options in many of these newer economy vehicles. They shift smoothly, they're efficient, and I even drove a new Maxima, a 2021 Maxima, and the CVT in that was excellent. It downshifted or simulated a downshift very quickly, quicker than most automatics, if I'm going to be honest with you. So Subaru is promising rev match downshifts with this new automatic transmission, and it's just going to be something that I have to try out before I judge it completely, but I wouldn't rule it out completely. The only thing that pisses me off though is I believe the top trim GT with all the performance bits only comes in an automatic, but again, I'll touch on that a little bit later on. Moving on, this is the most rigid chassis and the best suspension setup that the WRX has ever had. We also have an electric steering rack, of course, so that's another change that they made. And it's actually going to be built on Subaru's global architecture for the very first time. So with that, they're promising obviously the better rigidity of the chassis, but also better safety. And safety is very important to me. Crash test safety, that is. I've been watching a lot of IIHS crash tests, and you know, this is a performance car. People are going to be driving this faster. It's good to see that Subaru has increased the crash rating of this new WRX. And with this new rigid chassis, the NVH has also been improved, the noise, vibration, and harshness. That is one thing about the previous generation WRX. It felt so raw that you got a lot more of the tire noise, the road noise, etc. coming in. So that was one of the improvements that they could have made. It wasn't a big deal in my opinion, but it just so happens to be a byproduct of this new WRX with the new chassis changes. We also have adaptive suspension. I think that's only bespoke to that GT trim, which comes only with the automatic or the CVT, whatever. But I wouldn't be too concerned with the adaptive suspension. In most cars, when you switch between the comfort, the sport, it almost never makes a true difference. But again, we haven't driven this new WRX, so we don't really know for sure, but this is just my assumption after driving like hundreds of vehicles. But really, the number one controversy that everybody is talking about with this new WRX is the way it looks. And people have said all kinds of reckless things about it. And you know what? They're right. A lot of people, they're saying it looks like an SUV, it looks like the Crosstrek, it looks like a Civic from the rear. And it's all correct. It's very true. It does look very strange indeed. Especially that rear end. That's what pisses me off. Why does it look like the 10th generation Civic? I don't know. But the really fucking stupid thing that Subaru did was put that black plastic cladding all throughout the vehicle, over the wheels, on the fenders. That is really dumb. Usually it's only SUVs that come with that. And the only reason why new SUVs have that is to distinguish itself from a hatchback, because most of these SUVs, if you will, are just hatchbacks that are just lifted up, or cars that are lifted up. Well, this is a car. It does not need this plastic cladding. Now, the other reason why manufacturers do this, I'm sure, is to save money by not painting those fenders. But my gosh, that really makes this WRX look cheap, and that's what makes people think it looks like a Crosstrek or like an SUV. It's really horrendous. It's a shame really that they had to do that. Now owners will have to spend money trying to get it painted to body match the rest of the panels. But otherwise the front is okay. It's just the black plastic cladding and the fact that the rear end looks like a Civic. Also, this is the regular WRX. It's not the STI that they unveiled. So this thing needs that big old dining table spoiler in the back that I think could help the look of it. But I don't know. It is a strange looking vehicle. I will admit to that. But regardless, let me just move on into the interior bits and some of the other safety features before I talk about the conclusion. So the interior also got totally redesigned, and it's for the best because the previous generation didn't really have much of an interior. Now this is a welcome touch, I admit. We also have a huge 11.6-inch screen. Now I believe this is optional, but if you do get this screen, it reminds me a lot of what the new Ram has. The new pickup truck, just a massive screen with all the controls on there. But other than that screen, I actually do like the design approach to a lot of the other new Subarus for their interiors. They do look a lot more upscale, so it is nice, and now this new WRX is getting that type of treatment. We also have a new legitimate Harman Kardon sound system. It's like a 505 watt sound system, I believe. That's also going to be a welcome touch because so far all the WRX sound systems were like tin cans, but again, this is supposed to be like a four-wheel drive or all-wheel drive, fun to drive, daily driver. Music really wasn't a big deal, but it's nice to see that this is getting a better interior and a better sound system. We also have some new safety features as well. And I like the fact that you can fold down the rear seats 60/40. That is a very practical touch. But anyway, let's move on into the conclusions, because this is what I've been really waiting to talk about. And that's the fact that a lot of these new sporty vehicles that we've come to love, even though manufacturers are still making them, which I'm grateful for, but I see it happening all the time. These manufacturers, they are neutering a lot of these vehicles. A lot of that is due to the regulations. You know, the V8s are going away, and even if some of these vehicles do come with a V8, they're either really muffled and they don't really sound that great anymore. They're just too quiet now. That's something that they did with the new Jaguar F-Type. They made it much quieter than the previous generation. And hell, even the new Acura NSX, I mean, just look at that thing. It's a complete opposite of what the original NSX was. People thought that they were going to put like a V10 in it and all these other crazy things, but nope, it's an automatic, it's a hybrid, it's got turbos on it. The complete and absolute opposite of the original NSX, which had the naturally aspirated Honda Accord V6, a manual transmission, and there was real driver engagement there. And I already talked about the Mustang in the beginning, and we also have things like the new C8 Corvette that keeps getting hyped up like crazy, when really the reality is it's just a big softy of a car. I mean, there's really no driver engagement with the C8. The only reason why it gets all the praise that it does is due to its low 0 to 60 times. It just looks great on paper. So all these reviewers, these magazines, they praise it like crazy. And the sad thing is, it doesn't even have like that neck snapping acceleration that I came to expect out of it. So that's the thing with a lot of these newer vehicles and these twin turbo V8 vehicles. They don't particularly sound that amazing. They're just muffled, chill vehicles, which is fine, but that's where I really came to respect cars like the previous generation WRX. I just felt something when I drove that car, and it was pragmatic, it was all-wheel drive, so you can drive it all year round. Forget the douche factor that's associated with it. It was just a really smart car that it just made sense owning. It just had an amazing resale value. It was just a good car. Now this new one, again, they're doing these small little things to neuter it, like the electric steering rack, weird little automatic CVT transmission things, and just all kinds of random things. And of course they have to neuter the looks of it as well. It's almost as if they don't want us to purchase these performance cars because they're really trying to shove down this EV narrative down our throat. We have these random suspect gas shortages. I mean, it's just the reality of what we're facing. The larger displacement engines, it's all going away. And it's as if these manufacturers are trying to tell us that crossover SUV electric things are cool and that's the future, whether you like it or not, and you better start getting used to it. So the few performance cars that we do have left, they're not designing them to the fullest ability that they can, I suppose. Granted, performance cars are not the bread and butter of car manufacturers, I admit. But the 90s was a special time for performance cars. All those Japanese epic sports cars that are available at that time, it was just cool to see them put that type of effort into them. Now all that effort has gone to like the SUVs and the electric cars of today. And these performance cars have become like an afterthought almost. And eventually they just kill them off by saying that the demand wasn't there, etc. So it's just a sad thing. We have things like the new Nissan 400Z or simply the Z, I think is what they're calling it. It's still built on that old 10-15-year-old G37 platform, right? So they're just making some of this stuff just for the sake of making it. I don't know. We just need to go out there and really test drive a lot of these vehicles to properly judge it. But if I drove this new WRX, would I like it? I mean, I'm assuming I would. I'm sure this is not like a bad vehicle, but it's sad that they did the stuff they did with the looks, and that new automatic transmission. It's just going to have to be something that we have to check out for ourselves to truly judge. But you let me know your thoughts in the comment section about this new 2022 Subaru WRX. Is this going to be a vehicle that you're going to consider purchasing, or are you a current owner of a WRX? Let me know. But thanks again for watching this little rant. Take care and goodbye.